He thought it was just another afternoon, until a car came out of nowhere. And in one split second, a single dad with nothing to his name threw himself into the path of danger. The cameras caught it all, and the world called him a hero. But she wasn't just a bride, she was an heiress worth billions. And that's when the lies began. Whispers he faked the rescue for money, threats to take his little girl away, and a secret hidden in her own family that could ruin them both. Now, the truth could cost them everything. Will saving her life destroy his? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Whitmore Plaza as Noah Carter checked his watch. His school bus route had finished early, giving him just enough time to pick up Lily's prescription before she got home from her after-school art club. The familiar weight of worry eased a bit as he clutched the pharmacy bag. This month's inhalers had stretched his budget thin, but at least his daughter could breathe easier. He paused at the crosswalk, taking in the bustling scene before him. The plaza was alive with activity. Shoppers hurrying between boutiques, office workers catching late lunches, and what looked like a professional photo shoot taking place near the central fountain. A woman in a flowing white dress twirled while cameras flashed. Noah's attention snapped to a strange sound, metal scraping against concrete, followed by startled shouts. A sleek silver sedan was rolling forward, picking up speed as it moved down the slight incline. No driver was visible behind the wheel. His heart jumped into his throat as he realized the car's trajectory. It was heading straight for the photo shoot, where the bride was laughing with her styling team, completely unaware of the danger bearing down on them. Without thinking, Noah dropped the pharmacy bag and broke into a sprint. "Look out!" he shouted, his voice joining the growing chorus of warnings from onlookers. The bride turned, confusion crossing her face, but she was moving too slowly. Time seemed to stretch like taffy as Noah's training kicked in. 5 years as an Army medic had taught his body to react while his mind was still processing. He reached the woman just as the sedan jumped the curb. His arms wrapped around her waist, and he twisted, using his momentum to pull them both behind a large concrete planter. They hit the ground hard, Noah taking the brunt of the impact. The screech of metal on stone filled the air as the car scraped past their hiding spot, finally coming to rest against the fountain with a tremendous crash. For a moment, all Noah could hear was his own breathing and the rapid heartbeat of the woman pressed against him. Then the world rushed back in, people shouting, phones recording, someone calling for help. "Are you all right?" Noah asked, carefully helping the bride sit up. Her elaborate updo had come partially undone, and there was a small tear in her dress, but she appeared unharmed. Yes, I think so," she replied, her voice steady despite the circumstance. "You saved my life." Her eyes met his, wide with shock and gratitude. "Grace! Oh my God, Grace!" A woman, in a designer suit, pushed through the gathering crowd. "Someone call an ambulance!" "I'm okay, Sandra," the bride, Grace, assured her. She turned back to Noah. "But you're bleeding." Noah reached up to touch his face, his fingers coming away red. His glasses had broken in the fall, leaving a small cut on his temple. "The paramedics are 3 minutes out," someone announced. Phones were still recording, and Noah could hear snippets of excited conversation. "That's Grace Whitmore." "The Whitmore heiress? Did you get the whole thing on video?" Noah tried to stand but wavered slightly. Grace steadied him with a gentle hand on his arm. "Please stay still until the medics check you out," she said. Her professional poise was returning, though her hands still trembled slightly. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Noah thought of the pharmacy bag lying somewhere on the street, hoping the inhalers hadn't been damaged. He needed to call Mrs. Chen from next door, ask her to watch Lily a little longer. "Your glasses," Grace said softly, picking up the broken frames. "I'll replace them, of course, and any other medical expenses." "That's not necessary," Noah started to protest, but she cut him off with a gentle firmness. "Please, it's the least I can do." The ambulance arrived, red and white lights painting the growing crowd in alternating colors. Paramedics swarmed around them, checking vital signs and asking questions. Despite Grace's insistence that she was fine, they wanted to take her to the hospital to be sure. "He needs to be checked too," Grace told them, pointing to Noah's cut and the way he was favoring his right side. And that was how Noah Carter found himself sitting in an ambulance beside Grace Whitmore, the wail of the siren filling the awkward silence between them. She had insisted they ride together, though a second ambulance had arrived. Now she sat perfectly straight, her ruined wedding dress gathered around her, stealing occasional glances at him. Noah kept his eyes forward, acutely aware of how surreal this moment was. Less than an hour ago, he'd been driving his normal route, thinking about homework and dinner plans. Now he was heading to the emergency room with a woman whose family name was on half the buildings in town. "I'm Grace," she said finally, though he already knew. "Grace Whitmore. And you are?" "Noah Carter." "Thank you, Noah Carter." Her voice was soft but sincere. "What you did." Most people would have frozen. He shrugged, wincing slightly at the movement. "Anyone would have helped." "No," she said firmly. "They wouldn't have. And we both know it." Another silence fell, filled only by the rhythm of the siren and the gentle sway of the ambulance. Noah thought about Lily waiting at art club, about the monthly budget he'd have to rework, about the stack of permission slips on his bus dashboard that needed reviewing. His ordinary life seemed a universe away from this moment. "You're hurt because of me," Grace said suddenly. "Please let me help with any medical expenses. I insist." Before Noah could respond, the ambulance slowed and backed into the emergency bay. The doors swung open to reveal a team of medical staff waiting with wheelchairs, ready to whisk them both inside for examination. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the cramped emergency room cubicle as Noah gingerly touched his split lip. His cracked glasses sat folded on the small metal table beside him, making the world around him slightly blurry. The white curtain rustled, and Grace Whitmore stepped in, her designer wedding gown now partially hidden beneath a pale blue hospital gown. "I'm so relieved you're okay," Grace said, settling onto the chair across from where Noah perched on the exam bed. Her perfectly styled hair from the photo shoot had come loose, making her seem more human somehow. "The doctors say nothing's broken?" "Just some scrapes and bruises." Noah shifted uncomfortably on the paper-covered mattress. "How about you?" "I'm fine, thanks to you." Grace's eyes lingered on his injured lip and the nasty scrape along his jawline. "But I insist on covering your medical bills. And replacing your glasses, of course." Noah straightened, his pride prickling. "That's really not necessary." "Please." Grace leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You saved my life. It's the least I can do." A nurse swept in with paperwork, breaking the moment. As she checked Grace's vital signs one last time, Noah noticed Grace studying the pharmacy bag he'd managed to hold onto during the chaos. "Your daughter has asthma?" she asked softly after the nurse left. Noah nodded, surprised she'd noticed. "Lily. She's 11. That must be difficult to manage." There was genuine concern in her voice, no hint of pity. "We get by." Noah tried to smile, but his split lip made him wince. "The prescriptions are expensive, but her breathing's worth every penny." Grace's fingers moved swiftly over her phone while Noah signed his discharge papers. He didn't notice her discreetly texting her assistant about sending a month's supply of inhalers to his address. Another nurse entered, this one more serious. "Ms. Whitmore, you're extremely lucky. The impact, had Mr. Carter not intervened, could have been fatal given the vehicle's speed and trajectory." Noah watched Grace pale slightly at these words. She pressed her manicured fingers against her temples, the reality of what could have happened finally sinking in. "I should get your number," Grace said suddenly, looking up at Noah. "Just in case there are any insurance questions or anything." "Right, of course." Noah recited his number, watching as she typed it into her phone. She then sent him a quick text, so he'd have hers. "Thank you again," Grace said, standing. "For everything." Noah nodded, gathering his belongings and the pharmacy bag. "Take care, Miss Whitmore." "Please, call me Grace." They shared one last look, An odd moment of connection between two people from very different worlds, before Noah stepped through the curtain and made his way down the sterile hallway. The automatic doors slid open, and he walked out into the cool evening air. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, a peaceful end to a chaotic day. As he headed toward the bus stop, Noah pulled out his battered phone and saved Grace's number, though he wasn't sure he'd ever have reason to use it. His body ached, his glasses were broken, but at least he had Lily's medicine. That's what mattered most. The city bus wheezed to a stop in front of him, and Noah climbed aboard, ready to get home to his daughter. He had a feeling she wouldn't believe the story of how her dad had spent the afternoon rescuing a bride in Whitmore Plaza. Morning sunlight streamed through the small kitchen window of Noah's modest duplex in Maple Run. The familiar sounds of sizzling eggs and toast popping up filled the cozy space as he prepared Lily's breakfast. His split lip still stung a bit from yesterday's events, but it was nothing compared to what he dealt with as an army medic. "Daddy, can I have extra strawberries?" Lily asked from her perch at their worn wooden table, her legs swinging beneath her chair. "Sure, sweetheart." Noah reached for the container in the fridge, wincing slightly as his bruised shoulder protested the movement. That's when his phone, sitting on the counter, started buzzing like an angry bee. Text after text poured in, making the device dance across the laminate surface. Frowning, Noah picked up the phone. His eyes widened as he scrolled through dozens of messages from friends, former army buddies, and even parents from his school bus route. "Hero bus driver saves Whitmore bride." "Noah, you're on the news." "Way to go, Carter." "What's happening?" Lily asked, curiosity sparking in her eyes as she noticed her father's surprised expression. Noah tapped one of the shared links, and suddenly their small kitchen was filled with a news anchor's crisp voice. "In a dramatic scene yesterday outside Whitmore Plaza, a quick-thinking school bus driver became an unexpected hero when he saved Grace Whitmore, heiress to the Whitmore Hotel empire, from a potentially fatal accident." The screen showed crystal-clear security footage of the incident, the driverless sedan rolling toward the photo shoot, Noah sprinting across the plaza. The last-second rescue that sent them both tumbling behind the planter. The report cut to shaky cell phone videos from various angles, bystanders gasping and cheering. "That's my daddy," Lily squealed, abandoning her breakfast to rush to Noah's side. Her small hands gripped his arm as she watched the footage, face glowing with pride. "You're a hero again, just like when you were a medic." Noah felt his cheeks warm. He'd never been comfortable in the spotlight, preferring to help people quietly without fanfare. "I just did what anyone would do, honey." The identity of Ms. Whitmore's rescuer has been confirmed as Noah Carter, a local school bus driver and former Army combat medic, the reporter continued. "Sources say Ms. Whitmore personally ensured Mr. Carter received medical attention following the incident." Noah's phone buzzed again, but this time it was an incoming call. His heart skipped when he saw the name, Grace Whitmore. "Hello?" he answered, trying to sound calmer than he felt. "Noah?" Grace's voice was warm and slightly apologetic. "I hope I'm not calling too early. I just wanted to warn you about the news coverage, but I see I'm a bit late." "It's quite a surprise," he admitted, watching Lily return to her breakfast, still beaming. "I have a proposition for you," Grace continued. "The Whitmore Foundation is hosting our annual gala next Friday evening. I'd love to properly thank you there, and—" she paused briefly. "Actually, I'd like to discuss something more substantial. We're launching a veterans housing initiative, and given your background, I think you could offer valuable insight. Would you consider coming to the gala as my guest?" Lily would be more than welcome too, of course. Noah's throat tightened. The Whitmore Foundation Gala was the social event of the season, definitely not his usual scene. And consulting on a veterans project? It sounded meaningful, but also complicated. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not really." "Daddy!" Lily had obviously been listening. She bounced in her chair, eyes wide with excitement. "Is that Ms. Grace? Are we invited to a party? Please, can we go? Please?" Noah covered the phone's microphone. "Lily, it's a very fancy event. I'm not sure." "But you helped save Ms. Grace. And she was so nice about my inhaler." Lily's face took on that earnest expression that always melted his resolve. "Plus, You always say we should help other people when we can. Wouldn't helping other veterans be good?" From the phone, Noah heard Grace's gentle laughter. "She makes some excellent points." Noah glanced at the corner of the kitchen, where a simple wooden frame held a photograph of Sarah, his late wife. She was smiling in the picture, her eyes bright, with the same kind of determination he often saw in Lily's face. The morning light caught the glass, making it glow softly. "Could you give me a few minutes to think about it?" he asked Grace. "I'll call you right back." After hanging up, Noah stood before Sarah's photo. His fingers traced the frame's edge as he closed his eyes. "What do you think, love?" he whispered. "This is way outside my comfort zone, but Lily's right about helping others." He took a deep breath, offering up a quiet prayer for guidance. Lily's small hand slipped into his. "Mommy would say yes," she said softly. "She always liked helping people too." Noah opened his eyes, looking down at his daughter's upturned face. There was such trust there, such certainty. Maybe it was time to step out of the shadows of grief and do something bigger than himself. He picked up his phone and dialed Grace's number. "I'd be honored to attend," he said when she answered. "Both of us would." The joy in Lily's squealing and the warmth in Grace's voice told him he'd made the right choice. The gleaming iron gates of the Whitmore estate parted with mechanical precision as Noah's weathered pickup truck approached. He followed the curved driveway past immaculate gardens and ancient oak trees, feeling distinctly out of place in his freshly pressed khakis and best blue button-down shirt. The mansion loomed ahead, its limestone facade catching the late morning sun. Noah parked where indicated by a uniformed staff member, straightened his collar and took a steadying breath. He'd faced firefights in Afghanistan with less nervousness than this meeting with Grace's grandmother. A silver-haired butler led him through a foyer, larger than his entire duplex, past oil paintings and crystal chandeliers, to a bright sunroom overlooking the gardens. Evelyn Whitmore sat in a high-backed chair, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her posture regal despite the carved wooden cane propped against her armrest. "Mr. Carter," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was surprisingly firm. "Thank you for accepting my invitation." "Mrs. Whitmore," Noah replied, inclining his head respectfully. "Thank you for having me." Grace stood nearby, wearing a simple cream sweater and pearl earrings. She gave Noah an encouraging smile as he took the offered seat across from her grandmother. "Tea?" Evelyn gestured to the elegant service laid out on the table between them. "And please try the lemon cake. I insisted on baking it myself this morning, much to our chef's dismay." Noah accepted a delicate teacup, careful not to let his hands shake. "That's very kind of you, ma'am." "I understand you served as an army medic," Evelyn said, cutting straight to the point as she passed him a slice of cake. "How long?" 8 years, ma'am, 2 tours in Afghanistan." "And now you drive a school bus?" Her tone was neutral, but her sharp eyes missed nothing. "Yes, ma'am. It's steady work, and I get to be home every night with my daughter." Evelyn nodded slowly, taking a measured sip of tea. "Tell me about her." Noah's face softened. "Lily's 10. Smart as a whip, loves art and music. She makes welcome cards for new kids at school, so they won't feel lonely." "Despite her health challenges?" Evelyn pressed. "The asthma slows her down sometimes, but it doesn't stop her spirit." Noah set his teacup down carefully. "She's stronger than she knows." Grace watched the exchange with growing warmth, noting how her grandmother's initial formality began to thaw. "What made you run toward danger that day at the plaza?" Evelyn asked suddenly. "Most people run away." Noah considered this. "Honestly, ma'am, I didn't think about it. When you're trained to help people, it becomes instinct. Even at risk to yourself? Sometimes that's what's required." Noah's voice was quiet but firm. Evelyn's eyebrows rose slightly. She cut another piece of cake and placed it on his plate without asking. "And what do you think of all this attention now? The viral videos? The upcoming gala?" Noah chose his words carefully. "It's more than I'm comfortable with. But if it helps bring attention to the Veterans Housing Initiative, then some good can come from it." A hint of approval flickered across Evelyn's face. And what would you do with such a project, given the opportunity? Create something sustainable, Noah replied without hesitation. Not just houses, but a community, a place where veterans can rebuild their lives with dignity, where their families can put down roots. The questions continued, precise and probing. But Noah answered each one honestly, making no attempt to impress or flatter. He spoke of his work, his hopes for Lily's future, the challenges facing his fellow veterans. Throughout it all, Grace noticed her grandmother's expression growing increasingly thoughtful. As the afternoon light began to soften, Evelyn finally set down her teacup. "Thank you for indulging an old woman's curiosity, Mr. Carter. Grace, dear, would you show him out? I need to rest before dinner." Noah stood, thanking them both for their hospitality. As Grace walked him to his truck, she seemed lighter somehow, almost glowing in the late afternoon sun. Later that evening, after Noah had returned home, Grace sat with her grandmother in the estate's library. The space was warm with lamplight and the smell of old leather books. "Well?" Grace asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Evelyn looked up from her needlework with a knowing smile. "In 40 years of watching people parade through this house, I've never met a man less interested in impressing me." She set her embroidery aside. "And that, my dear, is precisely what makes him impressive." Grace felt her cheeks warm as she checked her phone. The hotel's rooftop garden would be catching the sunset right about now. She opened the camera app and walked to the window, capturing the perfect moment when the glass dome caught the golden light. Before she could second-guess herself, she sent the photo to Noah with a simple message. "Thought Lily might like to see this." Grace sat in her glass-walled office on the top floor of Whitmore Plaza, afternoon sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her fingertips tapped a steady rhythm on her polished desk as she scrolled through security logs with Marcus, her head of security, a former Marine with salt and pepper hair and watchful eyes. "So walk me through this again," Grace said, leaning forward to study the screen. "The car was serviced just 2 days before the incident?" Marcus nodded, his expression grim. "Yes, Ms. Whitmore. There's a work order here for brake maintenance." He pointed to a line item on the screen. "But it wasn't done by our regular service team. It was logged by a contractor, Winston Auto Services." Grace frowned. The name meant nothing to her. "We don't use outside contractors for the executive fleet. That's been policy since before I was born." "Exactly." Marcus clicked through several more screens. "I tried to pull up their background check and insurance documents, but..." He gestured at the error message on screen. "The file's gone." "Gone?" Grace straightened in her chair. "How can it be gone?" "Deleted or moved. It is looking into it, but so far they haven't found any trace." Marcus's jaw tightened. "In 15 years of security work, I've never seen a contractor file just vanish." Grace stood and walked to the window, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The plaza stretched below, bustling with afternoon shoppers and tourists. Somewhere down there was the spot where the car had nearly. She pushed the thought away. "Could it be a computer glitch?" she asked, turning back to Marcus. "Possible, but unlikely. These systems have multiple backups." He closed his laptop with a quiet snap. "Whitmore, given what almost happened, I think we should launch a full investigation." Grace's phone buzzed, another message from her wedding planner about flower arrangements. She glanced at it and sighed. "Let's not overreact." The car was stopped. No one was hurt. She managed a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I have a wedding in 3 weeks, the foundation gala before that, and quarterly reports due to the board. We can look into this after things settle down." Marcus stood, his expression carefully neutral. "As you wish, Ms. Whitmore. But I'll keep digging quietly." After he left, Grace sank back into her chair and picked up her phone. Noah's number was still in her recent calls. Before she could second-guess herself, she pressed dial. "Grace?" His voice was warm, touched with surprise. "Hi, Noah. Is this a bad time?" "No. Just finished my afternoon route. Everything okay?" Grace twirled a strand of hair around her finger, a habit she thought she'd broken years ago. "Oh yes, just checking in. And, well, something odd came up with the car incident." She told him about the mysterious contractor and missing file, trying to keep her tone light. It's probably nothing. Just bureaucratic mix-ups. You know how big companies are. Missing security files don't sound like nothing, Noah said carefully. I have excellent people looking into it. Grace glanced at her calendar, packed with wedding appointments. I'm sure it'll sort itself out. How's Lily? She's good, working on a science project about butterflies. There was a pause. Grace, if something feels wrong... Really, it's fine, she cut in quickly. I'm just letting wedding stress get to me. Speaking of which, I should go. Meeting with the florist in 20 minutes. After they hung up, Grace rode the private elevator to her penthouse. Night had fallen while she worked, and the city sparkled below like scattered diamonds. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching her breath fog the window. The missing file nagged at her thoughts, but she pushed it aside. She had a wedding to plan, a foundation to run, and a board to please. There wasn't time for paranoia about computer glitches. Still, as she turned away from the window, she couldn't quite shake the feeling that something wasn't right. But tomorrow would bring more meetings, more decisions, more responsibilities. The mystery of Winston Auto Services would have to wait. The grand ballroom of Whitmore Plaza sparkled under the warm glow of crystal chandeliers. Hundreds of guests in formal attire mingled beneath the soaring ceiling, their conversations creating a gentle hum that mixed with the soft classical music played by a string quartet in the corner. Noah Carter stood at the edge of the crowd, tugging at the collar of his new tuxedo. The rental shop had done a good job with the fit, but he still felt out of place among the designer gowns and custom suits. He watched Lily, dressed in a pale blue dress that Grace had helped pick out, happily nibbling on a chocolate-covered strawberry at a nearby table. Nervous? Grace appeared beside him, radiant in an elegant emerald evening gown. Her grandmother's pearls gleamed at her throat, and her dark hair was swept up in an intricate style that emphasized her graceful neck. That obvious, huh? Noah managed a small smile. You faced combat situations. This is just a room full of people in fancy clothes. Grace touched his arm lightly. Besides, you look very distinguished. Before Noah could respond, Evelyn Whitmore made her way toward them, her silver-headed cane tapping against the marble floor. She wore a classic navy dress and carried herself with the dignity of decades at the helm of Whitmore's charitable endeavors. There's my hero, Evelyn said warmly. Ready for your moment in the spotlight, Noah? As ready as I'll ever be, Mrs. Whitmore. Evelyn, please, we're family tonight. She winked at Grace, who blushed slightly. The room's lights dimmed, and a spotlight illuminated the stage. Grace squeezed Noah's hand quickly before making her way to the podium. The crowd fell silent as she began to speak. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're here to celebrate more than just the Whitmore Foundation's continued commitment to our community. We're here to honor true heroism. Grace's voice carried clearly through the ballroom. 3 weeks ago, I experienced firsthand what it means to have someone put their life on the line for a stranger. Noah felt dozens of eyes turned toward him. Lily beamed with pride from her seat. Noah Carter didn't hesitate when he saw danger. He acted with courage, selflessness, and skill, the same qualities he showed as an Army medic serving our country. Grace's eyes found his in the crowd. But what truly impressed me wasn't just his bravery in that moment. It was learning about the quiet dignity with which he faces every day as a single father, a school bus driver, and a member of our community. She gestured for Noah to join her on stage. His legs felt wooden as he walked up the steps, but Grace's genuine smile helped steady him. Please join me in honoring Noah Carter, whose actions remind us that true character reveals itself not in what we say, but in what we do when others need us most. She lifted a crystal plaque, its surface catching the light. Noah, thank you for saving my life. The applause was thunderous. Noah accepted the plaque, its weight solid in his hands. He stepped to the microphone, his throat tight with emotion. Thank you, Ms. Whitmore. I'm not much for speeches, he began, his voice growing stronger as he continued. In the Army, we learned that service isn't about recognition. It's about being there for each other. That's what community means. Whether it's driving kids safely to school or helping a stranger in trouble, We're all connected. This honor belongs to everyone who shows up for their neighbors every day." More applause filled the room. Noah caught sight of Lily wiping proud tears from her cheeks. A tall, impeccably dressed man approached the stage, his smile practiced and perfect. Carter Langford, Grace's ex-fiancé and board member, took the microphone with the ease of someone born to command attention. "What a touching moment," Carter said smoothly. "The Whitmore name has always stood for excellence and responsibility. Grace, you embody that legacy beautifully." His gaze lingered on her longer than necessary. "Let's raise our glasses to family, both old and new, and to the future of Whitmore Hotels." The toast felt pointed somehow, though Noah couldn't quite say why. He noticed Grace's smile tighten slightly at the corners. Evelyn's expression remained pleasant, but her grip on her cane tightened noticeably during Carter's toast. She caught Noah's eye and gave him a slight, knowing nod. Photographers surged forward, their flashes creating a storm of light. Grace stepped closer to Noah, her professional smile never wavering as the cameras clicked. "Follow me," she whispered, when the initial frenzy subsided. "I know a quieter spot." She led him toward a side door, navigating through the crowd with practiced grace. Noah followed, still holding the crystal plaque, grateful for the promise of a moment's peace away from the spotlight. They slipped through the door into a hushed corridor, the sounds of the gala muffled behind them. The lighting here was softer, and the thick carpet absorbed their footsteps. Portraits of past Whitmore leaders lined the walls, their faces serious and distinguished in their gilt frames. The air felt easier to breathe here, away from the press of bodies and expectations. Grace's shoulders relaxed visibly as they walked, and Noah felt some of his own tension begin to fade. "Sorry about all that," Grace said softly. "The media can be a bit overwhelming at these events." "You handle it like you were born to it," Noah replied. "Sometimes I wonder if that's a compliment or a curse," she murmured, leading them further down the quiet hallway. The quiet corridor offered a welcome respite from the glittering chaos of the ballroom. Noah loosened his bow tie slightly, letting out a long breath as the sounds of clinking glasses and polite laughter faded behind the heavy oak doors. Grace stood beside him, her emerald gown catching the softer light of the wall sconces. "Thank you for doing this," Grace said softly. "I know public speaking isn't your favorite thing." Before Noah could respond, quick footsteps echoed down the marble hallway. Rosa Alvarez hurried past, her hotel uniform crisp despite the late hour, gently guiding her young son Mateo by the shoulder. The boy's dress shirt was slightly untucked, his child-sized tie askew. Carter Langford emerged from a side door, his perfectly tailored tuxedo, a stark contrast to Noah's rental. He barely acknowledged Noah and Grace as he checked something on his phone. That's when Mateo broke free from his mother's grip. The boy darted toward Carter, small hand reaching out to tug at the expensive fabric of his sleeve. "Mr. Carter, Mr. Carter!" "Mateo, no!" Rosa's voice carried a note of panic. "Come here, right now!" But Mateo had already caught Carter's attention. The boy looked up with innocent brown eyes and spoke words that shattered the elegant quiet. "Mommy says you're my daddy." The corridor seemed to freeze. Carter's face drained of color so quickly it was as if someone had pulled a plug. His phone slipped from his fingers, clattering on the marble floor. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Langford." Rosa rushed forward, reaching for her son. Her hands trembled as she grabbed Mateo's shoulders. "He doesn't know what he's saying. Please, I'm sorry." Carter's recovery was swift, his features hardening into a mask of controlled anger. "Ms. Alvarez," he said, voice low and dangerous, "I suggest you keep better control of your child and his imagination." His eyes darted to Grace, then back to Rosa. "We wouldn't want any unfortunate misunderstandings to affect your position here." Rosa pulled Mateo close, her spine straight despite the fear in her eyes. "Yes, Mr. Langford, come on, mijo." She hurried away, whispering rapid Spanish to her confused son. Noah stood very still, the scene burning itself into his memory. He glanced at Grace and saw the same stunned recognition in her eyes. She took a half step toward Carter, but before she could speak, A sharp electronic chime cut through the tension. Someone's phone buzzed, then another, and another. The sound spread like ripples in a pond. A woman's gasp echoed from the ballroom, followed by urgent whispers. Noah's own phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out to find a barrage of notifications, all linking to the same breaking news story. His stomach dropped as he read the headline, "Hero or Hoax." Sources claim Whitmore Plaza rescue was staged for payout. The article was already spreading across social media, complete with carefully edited security footage that made it appear as if Noah had been lingering near the sedan before the incident. Anonymous witnesses claimed they'd seen him checking the car's position multiple times that day. "This is ridiculous," Grace said, reading over his shoulder. "Noah, we'll handle this. My lawyers will." His phone rang, cutting her off. The screen displayed Diane Hollis. Noah's hand tightened around the device as he answered. "Noah." Lily's grandmother's voice was tight with disapproval. "Mark and I have just seen the news. What were you thinking, dragging our granddaughter into this circus?" "Diane, this isn't what it looks like." "We warned you about stability," Mark's voice cut in. They must have been on speaker. "If you continue putting Lily at risk with this publicity stunt." "It's not a stunt," Noah said firmly, though his heart was racing. "Then end it," Diane demanded. "Walk away from the Whitmores, from these events, from all of it. Because, if you don't—" She paused, and Noah could hear the steel in her voice. "We'll have no choice but to petition for custody. For Lily's sake." The call ended. Noah stared at the phone, feeling as if the floor had dropped out from under him. The threat hung in the air, heavy as storm clouds. "Noah?" Grace touched his arm gently. "What did they say?" He stepped back, shaking his head. The corridor suddenly felt too narrow, too confined. "I need to get Lily home." "Please, let me help," Grace said. "We can fight this together. I know Carter must be behind." "You don't know anything." Noah cut her off, harsher than he meant to. The evening's events swirled in his mind. Mateo's innocent revelation, Carter's threat to Rosa, the coordinated smear campaign, and now Lily's grandparents. It was too much, too fast, and his daughter had to come first. Always first. He straightened his shoulders, falling back on military posture. "Thank you for the evening, Ms. Whitmore. I need to go." Grace flinched at the formality, but Noah was already turning away. He strode back to the ballroom, where Lily sat with Evelyn Whitmore, the two of them sharing a plate of petit fours. "Time to head home, sweetheart," he said, forcing a smile for his daughter. "But Daddy, they haven't even done the dancing yet," Lily protested, powdered sugar dotting her chin. Another time. He helped her with her coat, nodding respectfully to Evelyn. "Thank you for watching her, ma'am." The elderly woman's keen eyes studied his face. "Of course, dear. Drive safely." Noah guided Lily toward the exit, keeping his body between her and the whispers that followed them. He could feel Grace watching from the corridor, could almost sense her heart sinking as he walked away. But he couldn't look back. Not now. Not when everything he'd built for Lily was suddenly at risk. The night air hit his face as they stepped outside, cool and sharp. Behind them, the gala continued to sparkle, but its warmth no longer reached them. Noah helped Lily into their old sedan, his rented tuxedo a reminder of a world he should never have tried to enter. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Grace's corner office, but she barely noticed its warmth. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked up her phone, scrolling past the dozens of messages from board members and PR representatives to find Noah's number. He answered on the third ring. "Hello?" His voice was tight, guarded. "Noah, I'm so sorry about last night." Grace paced in front of her desk, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "Those accusations are ridiculous, and I promise you we'll get to the bottom of this." A heavy silence filled the line before Noah spoke. "My daughter's grandparents are threatening to take her away." His words came out flat, controlled, but Grace could hear the pain underneath. "I won't let that happen." Grace stopped pacing, her free hand gripping the back of her leather chair. "I'm hiring an independent safety auditor today to investigate everything, the car incident, the missing files, all of it." The board won't like that. The board doesn't have to like it. Grace's voice grew stronger. This is my company, and something isn't right here. A knock at her office door made Grace turn. Her assistant stood there looking nervous. Ms. Whitmore, the board members are gathering for an emergency meeting. Tell them I'll be there shortly. Grace turned back to the window. Noah, can you meet me at the Plaza Cafe around 2? There's someone I'd like you to talk to. I'll be there. After hanging up, Grace strode into the boardroom, her spine straight as steel. Carter sat at the far end, his usual smooth confidence somewhat ruffled. Other board members shuffled papers and whispered among themselves. This independent audit is unnecessary and potentially damaging to our image, one of the older members declared as Grace took her seat. What's damaging to our image is ignoring a possible safety breach and allowing innocent people to be slandered. Grace met each person's eyes in turn. I've already contacted Morrison Associates. They're the top safety audit firm in the country. Grace, be reasonable, Carter started, but she cut him off. The decision is made. She stood, gathering her things. I expect full cooperation from every department. Later that afternoon, Grace watched from her cafe table as Noah entered, looking tired but determined. Rosa Alvarez followed a few minutes later, slipping quietly into the chair between them. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. Thank you both for coming, Grace said softly. Rosa, please tell Noah what you told me earlier. Rosa glanced around nervously before speaking. 7 years ago, I was a housekeeper here at the plaza. Her accent was slight but noticeable. Carter, Mr. Langford, he made promises. Said he would help with the baby, set up a trust fund. She swallowed hard. After Mateo was born, he pretended not to know me. Said who would believe a housekeeper over him? Noah's jaw tightened. That's why you've stayed quiet all these years? Rosa nodded. With my accent, my position, who would listen? But Mateo, he asks about his father now. And after seeing what they're doing to you, Mr. Carter. She straightened her shoulders. Maybe it's time for truth. We'll need to be careful, Grace said. Carter has influence with the board, and clearly he's not afraid to play dirty. I have letters, Rosa offered. Cards he sent before Mateo was born. I kept everything. Noah leaned forward. Rosa, are you sure you want to do this? It could get ugly. My son deserves to know his father. Rosa's voice grew stronger. And you deserve the truth about your rescue of Ms. Whitmore. I've watched the security cameras for years. I know every angle. If they tampered with that car... Grace reached over and squeezed Rosa's hand. We'll protect you, both you and Mateo. That evening, Noah sat on the edge of Lily's bed, smoothing her favorite unicorn blanket. The nightlight cast soft shadows on the walls, making the room feel safe and small. Daddy? Lily's voice was sleepy but worried. Are those mean people going to make me go away? Noah's heart clenched. He gathered her close, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. No, sweetheart, I promise you, I will always keep you safe. But what if they don't believe you? What if Grandma and Grandpa? Listen to me. Noah pulled back to look into her eyes. Sometimes people say things that aren't true, but that doesn't make them right. You and me? We know what's real. We know what's in our hearts. Lily snuggled closer. Like how Mom used to say the truth always comes out in the wash? Noah smiled, remembering his late wife's favorite saying. Exactly like that. And no matter what anyone says or does, I will always be right here with you. Always. He tucked the blanket around her shoulders and kissed her forehead. I love you to the moon and back. And to Saturn's rings? Lily murmured, her eyes already closing. And to Saturn's rings. Noah sat there until her breathing evened out into sleep, his daughter's trust both a comfort and a fierce responsibility. In the quiet of her room, he renewed his silent promise. To protect her, to stand for truth, no matter what storms might come. The autumn morning air held a crisp bite as Grace pulled into the gravel lot of the old Maple Run Community Center. Her designer heels weren't exactly made for construction sites, but she'd chosen them purposefully. the small reminder that change often meant stepping out of comfort zones. Noah was already there, wearing well-worn work boots and a flannel shirt, directing a small army of volunteers where to set up folding tables. His face brightened when he saw Grace, though caution still lingered in his eyes after the gala's events. "Morning," he called out, walking over to help her with the box of pastries she'd brought. "You didn't have to dress up for this." "Oh, but I did," Grace said with a warm smile. "This matters more than any black tie event." The community lot wasn't much to look at, yet just 3 acres of patchy grass with chalk outlines marking where the veteran cottages would stand. But Grace could already see the potential, just as Noah had described it. A place where service members could rebuild their lives with dignity. Local residents began arriving in pickup trucks and minivans, carrying thermoses of coffee, homemade muffins, and worn but serviceable tools. Mrs. Peterson from the Methodist Church set up a refreshment station, her gray hair tucked under a baseball cap that read, "Jesus loves you." Mr. Rodriguez, who owned the hardware store, brought extra work gloves and safety glasses. "Look what we made, Daddy," Lily's voice rang out as she hurried over from where she'd been working with other kids at a craft table. She carried a stack of carefully decorated baskets, each one sporting construction paper hearts and welcome messages in rainbow colors. "They're beautiful, sweetheart," Noah said, crouching down to examine her handiwork. "Want to tell Ms. Grace what they're for?" Lily bounced on her toes, her enthusiasm infectious. "They're welcome baskets. See, each one has a heart and a note, and we're putting in soap and towels and stuff so the veterans feel special when they move in." Grace felt her own heart swell at the child's thoughtfulness. "That's a wonderful idea, Lily. Would you like to help me hand them out when the homes are finished?" "Yes, please," Lily beamed, then scampered off to show her creations to Mrs. Peterson. The local news van pulled up just as Noah was gathering everyone for the groundbreaking ceremony. Grace noticed how he tensed slightly at the sight of cameras, but she touched his arm gently. "They're here for the right reasons this time," she assured him. "Let's show them what community really means." The ceremony was beautifully simple. Noah spoke briefly about service and second chances. Grace announced the Whitmore Foundation's commitment to funding similar projects across the state. But the real magic happened after the official speeches, when everyone grabbed tools and started working. Grace found herself holding a shovel beside Rosa, who had come with Mateo to help. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, turning earth for what would become a community garden. "My abuela always said a home needs growing things," Rosa offered quietly. "It gives hope, you know." Grace nodded, understanding flowing between them. Both women knew about pressure and expectations, about keeping secrets to keep peace. But here in the morning sun, with dirt under their manicured nails, truth felt easier to reach. The news crew captured it all. Lily and Mateo planting marigold seeds, veterans and civilians working side by side, Noah teaching teenagers how to measure twice and cut once. The reporter seemed genuinely moved as she interviewed Grace about the project's vision. "This isn't just about housing," Grace explained, watching Noah help an elderly volunteer adjust her safety goggles. "It's about healing. When we serve others, we often find our own hearts mended in the process." By mid-morning, the lot had transformed. Foundations were marked, garden beds were turned, and a sense of possibility hung in the air, along with the scent of coffee and fresh-turned earth. Lily went from group to group, offering her welcome baskets to the veterans who had come to help, her smile brightening with each thank you she received. Grace found herself working alongside Noah as they cleared brush from what would become a playground area. Their hands brushed occasionally as they passed tools back and forth, sending quiet sparks through her fingers. "Thank you," Noah said suddenly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "For what?" "For believing in this, in me." He paused, looking out over the busy lot. "After everything at the gala." "The truth will come out," Grace assured him firmly. "But this what we're building here, this is bigger than any scandal." Noah's eyes met hers, warm and grateful, before turning back to their work. They continued in companionable silence, their movements falling into an easy rhythm. As the morning wound down, volunteers began packing up tools and exchanging phone numbers for future workdays. Lily had fallen asleep in a lawn chair, her face peaceful, a half-finished welcome basket still clutched in her small hands. Grace's heart felt full as she watched Noah gently lift his daughter, cradling her against his chest with practiced care. This was what mattered at board meetings or social media storms, but real people helping other real people. Driving home, Grace couldn't stop smiling. Her shoes were scuffed, her designer slacks had grass stains at the knees, and her muscles ached pleasantly from honest work. The morning had been everything she'd hoped for, and more. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Carter's name flashed on the screen with a message, "We need to talk about your hero." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Evelyn Whitmore's Victorian mansion as Noah's pickup truck crunched up the circular driveway. Lily bounced in her seat, clutching the bouquet of wildflowers she'd insisted on bringing. Grace's car was already parked near the front steps. "Remember your manners," Noah reminded gently, though he knew his daughter rarely needed such prompting. Inside, delicious aromas wafted from the kitchen: roasted chicken, herbs, and something sweet baking. Evelyn's housekeeper Martha showed them to the formal dining room, where Grace and her grandmother were setting out fine china with comfortable familiarity. "There's my favorite young lady," Evelyn said, opening her arms to Lily. The girl rushed forward with her flowers, and Evelyn's face lit up. "How thoughtful! Martha, would you find a vase for these lovely blooms?" The dining room felt warm and inviting despite its grandeur. Old hymn music played softly from a record player in the corner, the gentle melodies filling the space with a peaceful atmosphere. They settled around the table, where a golden brown roast chicken waited alongside garden vegetables and fresh rolls. "I hope you don't mind the music," Evelyn said, passing the potatoes to Noah. "These old hymns remind me of simpler times." "They're beautiful," Noah replied. "My mother used to play these on Sunday mornings." As they ate, Evelyn shared stories of her youth, illustrated by black and white photographs she'd brought to the table in an aged leather album. One showed her as a young woman, standing proud in front of the first Whitmore Hotel. "We weren't always what you see today," she explained, touching the photograph's edge tenderly. "My parents came here with nothing but hope and hard work." Lily leaned close to study each picture, asking questions about the old cars and dated fashions. Her natural curiosity drew smiles from everyone at the table. After the main course, while Martha brought out homemade apple pie, Evelyn disappeared briefly and returned with a small wooden box. "Noah, Grace mentioned you served as an army medic. I thought you might share some of your experiences with us." Noah hesitated, then carefully opened the box. Inside were dozens of folded papers, worn soft at the creases. "These are thank you notes," he explained quietly. "From families of soldiers I treated, sometimes from the soldiers themselves." Grace reached for one, pausing to ask permission. Noah nodded. "Dear Sergeant Carter," she read aloud. "I don't know if you remember my son James, but we'll never forget you. The doctors said if you hadn't acted so quickly that day." Her voice caught slightly. "I keep them like prayers," Noah admitted. "Reminders that even in the darkest moments, there's purpose." The conversation turned more personal as they moved to Evelyn's sitting room with their dessert. Lily curled up in an oversized armchair with a book Martha had found for her, leaving the adults to talk. "Sometimes," Noah said softly, staring into his coffee cup, "I feel guilty. About moving forward. About feeling." He glanced at Grace, then away. "Like I'm betraying Sarah's memory by opening my heart again." Grace reached over and touched his hand. "I understand guilt," she said. "Different kind, but still. The weight of being a Whitmore, always having to be perfect, make the right decisions, never show weakness." "Perfect is overrated," Evelyn commented, her wise eyes moving between them. "What matters is being true." "Would you mind," Noah asked hesitantly, "if we prayed together?" Grace's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but she nodded. Evelyn smiled and reached for their hands, completing the circle. Noah's prayer was simple but heartfelt. Lord, give us strength to face our fears. Help us trust in your timing. Guide us to be honest with ourselves and others. And thank you for bringing new friends into our lives. Amen, Evelyn whispered, squeezing their hands before letting go. Later, as Noah carried a sleeping Lily to his truck, Grace walked beside him through the cool evening air. No words passed between them, but their shared glance held warmth and understanding. Lily stirred only slightly as Noah buckled her in, then drifted back to sleep, clutching the book Martha had let her keep. Through the truck's window, Noah and Grace exchanged one more look, a moment of perfect clarity in the gentle darkness, full of unspoken possibility. The morning sun bathed Maple Run in golden light as dozens of cars lined the newly paved parking area. 6 freshly painted cottages stood proud against the backdrop of maple trees, their white trim gleaming and American flags waving from each porch. Welcome baskets, wrapped in cellophane and tied with red ribbons, waited on each doorstep. Noah adjusted his tithe, the same one he'd worn to the gala, and watched as the first families arrived. Veterans with their wives, children, and small moving trucks filled with furniture pulled up one by one. Each face showed a mixture of disbelief and gratitude as they took in their new homes. "Dad! Dad!" Lily tugged at his sleeve, practically vibrating with excitement. "Can I show them where to put their stuff? Please?" Noah smiled, smoothing her already neat hair. "Let them get settled first, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about. Some of them might be a little nervous about the crowd." Grace appeared beside them, elegant in a simple blue dress. "The local news crew just arrived," she said softly. "Are you ready for the ceremony?" Before Noah could answer, Mrs. Chen from the corner grocery store hustled past with an enormous pot of homemade soup. Church ladies followed with casseroles and pies, filling the community center's kitchen. The whole town had shown up to welcome their new neighbors. The first family to receive their keys was the Ramirez family. Former Marine Sergeant Mike Ramirez wheeled up the newly installed ramp, his wife Maria and their 2 young sons following close behind. Tears filled Maria's eyes as Grace handed them their keys. "Welcome home," Grace said warmly, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd. More families followed: the Wilsons, the Patels, the Johnson-Seach, receiving keys and welcome hugs from the community. Lily darted between groups, introducing herself and offering to help carry boxes or show children where the playground was. When all 6 families had their keys, Grace stepped up to the podium. Camera flashes popped as she spoke about community, service, and second chances. Noah stood to the side, watching her natural grace and genuine emotion touch every person present. "And none of this would have been possible," Grace continued, "without the dedication and vision of Noah Carter." She gestured for him to join her. His service didn't end when he left the Army. It continues here, in how he helps build bridges between people. Noah reluctantly stepped forward, his face warming at the applause. He kept his own speech brief, thanking the community for their support and welcoming the new residents. As the formal ceremony ended, Lily's clear voice rang out, "Can we sing now?" She'd been practicing for weeks with her music teacher, organizing a welcome performance. The crowd gathered around the community center's patio as Lily led a group of local children in America the Beautiful. Their sweet voices filled the air, and soon, adults joined in, creating an impromptu chorus that brought smiles to every face. Noah watched his daughter beam with pride as she conducted with enthusiastic waves of her arms. The sight made his heart swell. A gentle touch on his arm drew his attention. Grace, gesturing toward the storage shed behind the community center. They slipped away from the crowd, finding a quiet moment in the shade of the old building. The sounds of conversation and laughter drifted around them, but here they had a bubble of privacy. "You did it," Grace said softly. "Look at all those families." "We did it," Noah corrected. "This was your vision too." Grace stepped closer, her eyes bright with emotion. "Noah, I..." The space between them seemed to disappear naturally, like a gentle tide coming in. Noah's hand found her waist as Grace lifted her face to his. Their first kiss was soft, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Grace's fingers curled into his shirt front as Noah drew her closer, their hearts beating a matched rhythm of hope and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, Grace's smile was radiant. Noah touched his forehead to hers, allowing himself to feel the full weight of this moment, not just the kiss, but everything it represented. Trust, healing, a future he hadn't dared imagine. From her vantage point near the community center's window, Evelyn Whitmore observed the tender scene. Her knowing smile reflected decades of wisdom as she watched her granddaughter and the humble bus driver who had saved more than just her life that day at the plaza. Satisfaction settled over her features, and she turned back to the celebration, leaving the couple their private moment. The morning continued with families exploring their new homes, neighbors sharing food and stories, and children racing around the playground. Each cottage's front door stood open, welcoming new memories and fresh starts. American flags rippled in the breeze, and somewhere in the happy crowd, Lily's voice could be heard introducing herself to yet another new friend. The auditor's office was a stark contrast to the warmth of yesterday's ribbon-cutting celebration. Linda Chen sat behind her desk, surrounded by stacks of paper and 3 computer monitors. Her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose as she gestured for Grace and Noah to take the seats across from her. "I appreciate you both coming in so early," Linda said, her tone measured but urgent. She pulled out a thick folder and spread several documents across her desk. "What I'm about to show you isn't pretty, but it's thorough." Grace leaned forward, her designer blazer crinkling slightly. Noah sat beside her, his posture straight and alert, the same way he'd carried himself during his military service. "The contractor who worked on the sedan's brakes," Linda began, pointing to a highlighted section, "operates under the name Elite Auto Services. But when we dug deeper, it's actually a subsidiary of 3 different shell companies." She laid out more papers, creating a web of connections, all of them traced back to Carter Langford. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. "You're certain?" "Completely." Linda pulled up financial records on one of her monitors. "The money trail is clever, but not clever enough. Carter used offshore accounts to funnel payments through these companies." She tapped her pen against each name. Blue Harbor Holdings, Meridian Enterprises, and Summit Solutions. All registered in the Cayman Islands, all connected to his personal accounts. Noah's jaw tightened. "So the brake failure wasn't an accident?" "No," Linda confirmed. "The work order shows they deliberately damaged the brake line. It was timed to fail that specific afternoon." Grace's face had gone pale. She gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white. "He tried to. He could have killed me." "Or anyone else who got in the way?" Noah added quietly, remembering how close the sedan had come to the crowd of bystanders. Linda pulled out another stack of documents. "There's more. The missing security files? They weren't deleted. They were moved to a private server registered to one of Carter's shell companies. He's been collecting dirt on various board members for months." A knock at the door made them all turn. Rosa Alvarez stood in the doorway, her uniform pressed and neat despite the early hour. Her eyes were tired but determined. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Rosa said, "but I needed to tell you in person." She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. "I've scheduled the paternity test for Mateo this afternoon." Grace stood and walked over to Rosa, taking her hands. "Are you sure?" Rosa nodded. "My son deserves to know the truth. And after seeing what Carter is capable of," she squared her shoulders, "I won't let fear keep me quiet anymore." Noah recognized the courage it took, the same courage he'd seen in soldiers protecting their units. "We'll support you, Rosa, whatever happens." Linda cleared her throat. "Mrs. Alvarez, if you're willing to make a statement about your history with Mr. Langford, it could help establish a pattern of behavior." "Yes," Rosa said firmly. "I'll tell everything. About his promises, about how he threatened my job when I tried to contact him after Mateo was born." She smoothed her skirt, a habit when she was nervous. "Mateo asks about his father all the time now. He deserves more than lies and shadows." Grace's phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Grandmother wants to meet with the board tomorrow morning. She says it's time to clean house. She looked at Linda. Will your report be ready? First thing tomorrow, Linda confirmed. Every transaction, every shell company, every deleted file, documented and verified. Noah stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. The morning sun glinted off the Whitmore Plaza Hotel in the distance. Carter didn't just try to hurt Grace, he said quietly. He was willing to risk anyone nearby. All those people at the photo shoot, the sidewalk was full. Grace joined him at the window. We'll stop him. The truth is all here in black and white. Linda began gathering the documents into organized piles. I'll have copies prepared for the board meeting, the police, and your lawyers. She looked at Rosa. Would you like me to accompany you to the paternity testing facility, as an independent witness? Rosa's eyes welled with tears at the unexpected kindness. Yes, please, thank you. They spent the next hour going through each piece of evidence, marking the most damaging sections with colored tabs. Grace took detailed notes on her tablet, while Noah helped Linda organize the files chronologically. Rosa made coffee for everyone, the familiar task helping to steady her nerves. As they were finishing, Linda's assistant knocked and entered with a tablet. Mr. Langford is in his office. He's watching the news coverage of the veterans' cottages. They gathered around the tablet screen. Carter sat at his mahogany desk, his tie loosened, watching footage of yesterday's ribbon-cutting ceremony. The camera panned across happy families moving into their new homes, lingered on Lily leading everyone in God Bless America, showed Grace and Noah speaking to reporters about community and second chances. Carter's eyes narrowed as he watched, his fingers drumming against his desk. Linda muted the tablet. He doesn't know we have all this yet, but he will tomorrow. Grace straightened her spine, every inch the Whitmore heiress. Good. Let him spend one more day thinking he's won. Rosa clutched her cross necklace, the one her mother had given her when Mateo was born. I'll pick up Mateo early from school, take him to the test. He thinks it's just a regular doctor visit. We'll get through this, Noah said firmly, his military training showing in his steady voice. Together. The morning sun climbed higher over the city as they gathered their things. Linda secured the documents in her safe. Rosa headed to her shift at the hotel, and Grace prepared for calls with her lawyers. The weight of truth hung heavy in the air, but with it came the light of hope. Tomorrow would bring justice. Tomorrow would bring change. Noah walked Grace to her car in the parking garage. Will you be okay? She managed a small smile. I will be. Once this is finished, she squeezed his hand. Thank you for standing with us. The morning started like any other in Noah's modest duplex. He was folding laundry at the kitchen table while Lily sat cross-legged on the living room floor, working on her math homework. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching dust motes in its golden beams. Dad, can you check number 7? Lily asked, pushing her hair behind her ears. I think I did it right this time. Before Noah could answer, a sharp knock at the front door made them both jump. Through the window, he caught sight of several cars parked along their usually quiet street. His stomach tightened. Coming! He called, straightening his shirt. When he opened the door, 2 women in professional attire stood on his welcome mat. Behind them, he noticed movement, people with cameras getting out of their vehicles. Mr. Carter? I'm Sandra Martinez from Child Protective Services, and this is my colleague, Rebecca Thompson. We're here for an unannounced home visit. Noah's throat went dry. Of course, please come in. He stepped aside, shooting a worried glance at the growing crowd outside. Lily looked up from her homework, her pencil frozen mid-equation. Hi, sweetie, Sandra said warmly to Lily. Would you mind showing Rebecca your room while I talk to your dad? Lily's eyes darted to Noah. He gave her a reassuring nod, though his heart was pounding. It's okay, honey. Go ahead. As Lily led Rebecca down the hall, Sandra pulled out a tablet. Mr. Carter, we received several concerning reports about your home environment. She paused as shouting erupted outside. Through the window, Noah could see at least a dozen photographers and reporters crowding his front yard. "I'm sorry about that," he said, moving to close the curtains. "I don't know why they're—" "Mr. Carter, are you aware of this video?" Sandra turned her tablet toward him. On the screen was a clip from yesterday, when he'd tried to get through a group of reporters outside the grocery store. The footage was edited to show him red-faced and yelling, but cut out the overwhelming press of bodies and microphones that had surrounded him and Lily. "That's not. They've cut out the context," he tried to explain. "They were blocking our car, and I was just trying to—" More shouts from outside drowned out his words. Camera flashes strobed through the gaps in the curtains. "We've also received reports about your daughter missing school," Sandra continued, her expression carefully neutral. "Only for her asthma. I have doctor's notes for every absence." Noah moved to get the folder where he kept all of Lily's medical records, but Sandra raised her hand. "Mr. Carter, given the current situation and the concerns raised by Mrs. and Mr. Hollis, Diane and Mark, Lily's grandparents filed a complaint?" The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. A crash from outside made them both turn. Someone had knocked over the potted plant by his front steps. The shouting grew louder. Rebecca emerged from the hallway with Lily, whose face had gone pale. "Is everything okay, Dad?" Before Noah could answer, Sandra spoke. "Lily, we think it might be best if you stay with your grandparents for a little while, just until we can sort some things out." "What? No!" Lily ran to Noah, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I want to stay with Dad." Noah's hands trembled as he hugged her. "This is ridiculous. You can't just—" "It's a temporary placement, Mr. Carter," Sandra said firmly. "Until we complete our investigation, Mrs. Hollis is already on her way." The next 30 minutes passed in a blur. Noah helped Lily pack a bag while trying to keep his voice steady, promising her it would be okay, that it was just for a little while. He tucked her favorite pajamas into her backpack, along with her current reading book and her math homework. When Diane arrived, she wouldn't meet Noah's eyes. She just held out her hand for Lily's bag, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Daddy?" Lily's voice cracked as Sandra led her toward the door. "I don't want to go." Noah knelt down and pulled her into a tight hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I know, sweetheart, but it's just for a few days, okay? Be good for Grandma and Grandpa. I love you so much." "Love you too," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Then she was gone, hustled through the gauntlet of cameras and shouting reporters to Diane's waiting car. Noah stood in his doorway, watching until they turned the corner and disappeared. The CPS workers left soon after, leaving him with a stack of papers and a business card. The reporters lingered for another hour, but Noah barely noticed them anymore. Finally, when the street fell quiet, he walked to Lily's room. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, her bed half-made, colored pencils scattered across her desk, the science project she'd been working on still spread out on the floor. Noah sank onto her bed and picked up Mr. Hoppy, the well-loved stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. His late wife had given it to her for Easter, just months before the cancer diagnosis. The rabbit's fur was matted in spots, one ear slightly loose from years of being dragged everywhere. He held the rabbit close, surrounded by the remnants of his daughter's presence, and let the silence of the empty house wash over him. The city lights twinkled like fallen stars through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Grace's top-floor office. She stood behind her desk, hands pressed flat against the polished mahogany, facing down 7 stern faces around the conference table. The board members' expressions ranged from concerned to openly hostile. "Miss Whitmore." Richard Porter, the eldest board member, cleared his throat. "We've called this emergency meeting because the situation has become untenable." His bow tie seemed to quiver with disapproval. Grace straightened her spine, channeling her grandmother's steel. "The situation being?" "This circus with the bus driver." Patricia Chen cut in, tapping her manicured nails against a tablet. "And now these absurd accusations from a housekeeper? The press is having a field day." "Rosa Alvarez is our head of housekeeping services," Grace corrected firmly. "She's been with Whitmore Hotels for 15 years. Which makes her claims even more disappointing." James Wilson sighed, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "Really, Grace, You must see how this looks. First, this questionable rescue scenario, and now paternity allegations? It's textbook exploitation. Grace's phone buzzed quietly on her desk. Another message from Noah. She resisted the urge to check it, knowing it was probably about Lily. The thought of that sweet girl staying with her grandparents made Grace's chest ache. The rescue was real, Grace said. And Rosa's claims deserve— The markets don't care about moral crusades, Patricia interrupted. Our stock has dropped 12 points since this morning. Major investors are nervous. Carter Langford chose that moment to speak up from his position near the door. He'd been unusually quiet until now. I hate to say it, but they're right, Grace. We need to stabilize things quickly. His practiced concern almost seemed genuine. Let me step in as interim CEO, just until this blows over. Grace felt her pulse quicken. That's not necessary. Richard Porter slid a document across the table. We've prepared a statement for you to release tonight. It expresses appropriate distance from Mr. Carter's situation while maintaining professional courtesy. It also firmly denies any merit to Ms. Alvarez's accusations. Grace picked up the paper, scanning the carefully crafted words that would throw Noah and Rosa under the bus. Her stomach turned. And if I refuse? Patricia's smile was razor-sharp. Then we'll be forced to call a vote of no confidence. Carter would assume temporary control of operations, and we'd file an injunction to freeze your voting shares pending review of your fitness to lead. You can't do that, Grace said, but uncertainty crept into her voice. Article 7, Section 12 of the company charter says otherwise. James Wilson replied, Your grandmother may have trained you, Grace, but she's not here now. Sometimes leadership means making hard choices. Grace walked to the windows, buying time to think. The city stretched out below her, thousands of lights representing thousands of lives. Somewhere out there, Noah was probably sitting in Lily's empty room, wondering why she hadn't called back. Rosa was likely holding Mateo close, gathering courage for tomorrow's battles. You have 1 hour to record the statement, Richard Porter said, standing. Our PR team is waiting in the media room. The other board members rose, gathering their things. Carter lingered behind as the others filed out. I really am sorry about this, Grace, but it's for the best. You're too emotionally involved. Grace didn't answer until he'd left, whispering to the empty room. That's what you never understood, Carter. Someone has to care. She sank into her chair, pulling up Noah's latest message. Lily asked for her favorite blanket. Diane wouldn't let me bring it over. The words blurred as tears threatened. 20 minutes later, Grace sat in the small media room, looking into the camera's unblinking eye. The teleprompter scrolled with the board's carefully crafted statement. Her throat felt tight. Good evening, she began, her media training taking over. In light of recent events, I feel it necessary to address certain rumors and speculation. The words felt like ashes in her mouth, but she continued, choosing each phrase with painful precision. She wove in just enough ambiguity to buy time without fully committing to the board's narrative. As soon as the recording ended, Grace knew how it would look to Noah. The careful distancing, the diplomatic doubts cast on Rosa's character, the subtle undermining of his integrity, all packaged in perfectly polished corporate speak. She wanted to call him immediately, to explain it was just a temporary measure while she found another way. But before she could reach for her phone, Patricia Chen appeared in the doorway. The statement is already live, she announced with satisfaction. Carter's team will handle any follow-up questions. You should go home and get some rest, Grace. You look tired. Grace gathered her things slowly, each movement feeling like she was moving through water. As she rode the elevator down to the parking garage, her phone pinged with a news alert. There was her face on the screen, delivering those careful words that felt like betrayal. Below the video, a comment section was already filling up. One caught her eye. Guess the fairy tale is over. Money talks. She could picture Noah seeing this, sitting alone in his quiet house, believing she'd chosen wealth over truth. The parking garage was almost empty this late. Grace's heels clicked against the concrete as she walked to her car, each step echoing like judgment. She slid behind the wheel but didn't start the engine, just sat there in the dark, remembering Noah's warm eyes when he'd kissed her behind the tool shed at Maple Run. Remembering how Lily had hugged her at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, whispering, "Thank you for making Daddy smile again." Her phone buzzed one final time, a message from Noah. She couldn't bring herself to open it yet. Instead, she rested her forehead against the steering wheel and did something she hadn't done since she was a little girl. She cried until her shoulders shook, mascara running down her cheeks, alone, in the quiet dark of the garage. The stained glass windows cast long shadows across the empty church's wooden pews. In the dimness of early evening, Noah Carter sat alone in the front row, his shoulders hunched beneath the weight of loss. The only light came from the altar's devotional candles, their flames dancing softly in the sacred silence. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted another candle, touching its wick to one already burning. The small flame caught, and he carefully placed it in the holder. 2 candles now burned side by side, one for Lily, one for Sarah. His daughter and his late wife, the 2 loves of his life, both now beyond his reach in different ways. "Lord," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, "I don't understand your plan right now, but I trust you're watching over my little girl." He paused, swallowing hard. "And Sarah. I hope you're proud of how I've tried to raise her. I need your help now more than ever." The wooden pew creaked beneath him as he shifted, clasping his hands together. His wedding ring caught the candlelight, a dull gold reminder of promises kept and a life forever changed. The church's silence wrapped around him like a familiar blanket, offering comfort even as his prayers seemed to echo in the emptiness. From the back of the church, Grace stood motionless in the shadows. She hadn't meant to intrude on such a private moment. Her heels had fallen silent on the carpet as she'd spotted Noah's familiar outline in the front pew. Now, watching him pray in the gentle candlelight, her heart ached with the weight of what she'd done and what she hadn't done. Noah's shoulders shook slightly, and Grace pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from making a sound. This strong, steady man who had saved her life was breaking, and she had helped cause it. The carefully worded statement she'd released played over in her mind, each diplomatic phrase now feeling like a betrayal. She wanted desperately to walk down that aisle, to sit beside him and explain everything. But she remained rooted in place, knowing she had no right to interrupt this sacred moment between a father and his God. Instead, she offered up her own silent prayer, asking for guidance and forgiveness. The tap of a cane on stone made Grace turn. There in the doorway stood her grandmother, Evelyn, her silver hair catching the last light of day through the windows. With a slight tilt of her head, Evelyn motioned Grace to follow her outside. The evening air was cool as they stood in the church's small garden. Crickets chirped in the growing darkness, and the scent of late-blooming roses hung heavy in the air. "I thought I might find you here," Evelyn said softly, settling onto a stone bench. "You always did come to church when your heart was troubled." Grace wrapped her arms around herself, fighting back tears. "I've made such a mess of everything, Gran." "Have you?" Evelyn's voice was gentle but firm. "Or have you simply forgotten who you are?" "What do you mean?" Evelyn patted the bench beside her. When Grace sat, her grandmother took her hand, her skin papery, but her grip still strong. "Let me tell you about your great-grandfather William Whitmore, though that wasn't his name when he first arrived here." Grace blinked in surprise. "It wasn't?" "No, it was Wilhelm Weissmuller. He came through Ellis Island with nothing but a cardboard suitcase and $5 sewn into his coat." Evelyn's eyes grew distant with memory. "He changed his name because no one would hire a German immigrant in those days. He slept on park benches and worked 3 jobs until he could afford to rent a tiny room above a bakery." "I never knew," Grace whispered. "He built this empire from nothing, dear. But do you know what he was most proud of?" Evelyn squeezed Grace's hand. "Not the hotels, not the money. He was proud that he never forgot what it was like to be powerless. Every decision he made, he asked himself, 'What is the right thing to do?'" Grace felt tears slip down her cheeks. "The board will fight me." "Of course they will." Evelyn's voice hardened. Power never gives up easily. But our name, the name your great-grandfather chose, it means something. It means we do what's right, not what's easy. I'm scared, Gran, Grace admitted. What if I lose everything? Everything. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Tell me, when you were lying on that sidewalk with Noah protecting you from that car, what did all the money and power matter then? Grace closed her eyes, remembering the terror of that moment, and the absolute certainty in Noah's arms as he'd pulled her to safety. No hesitation, no calculation of cost or benefit. Just pure, moral courage. The truth is like that car, Grace, Evelyn continued. It's bearing down whether we like it or not. The only question is whether you'll face it head-on or let it run you over. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the evening birds call to each other. Finally, Grace straightened her shoulders, feeling strength flow back into her spine. I need to gather evidence. Real proof that no one can deny or twist around. Evelyn smiled, pride shining in her eyes. Now that sounds like a Whitmore. Grace stood, her mind already racing with plans. The auditor's findings, Rosa's documentation, the security logs, pieces of a puzzle that needed to be assembled carefully and completely. She wouldn't move until she had everything in place. But when she did... Gran? She turned back to her grandmother. Thank you for reminding me what our name really means. Go do what needs to be done, dear, Evelyn said softly. Your great-grandfather would be proud. The morning sun cast long shadows through the windows of Maple Run's community center. Grace sat at a weathered folding table, her usual polished appearance softened by lack of sleep and worry. Across from her, Rosa clutched a manila envelope, her knuckles white. The auditor, Ms. Chen, spread documents across the table with careful precision. I have everything here, Ms. Chen said, her voice steady. The shell companies, the payments, even emails Carter thought he'd deleted. She pushed her glasses up and pointed to a particularly damning piece of paper. He hired Jackson, Sons Auto, through 3 different front companies. They're the ones who tampered with the brakes. Grace's stomach turned as she examined the evidence. The signatures were unmistakable. Carter's familiar scrawl appeared on document after document, each one building a clear picture of his plan to discredit her. Rosa's hands trembled as she opened her envelope. The results came yesterday. She pulled out a single sheet of paper, the medical letterhead crisp and official. I always knew, but now there's proof. Her voice cracked. Carter is Mateo's father. Grace reached across the table and squeezed Rosa's hand. You were so brave to do this. Mateo deserves to know the truth, Rosa said, lifting her chin. All these years, I thought staying quiet was protecting him. But watching him at the gala, seeing how Carter just... She shook her head. My son is not something to be ashamed of. Ms. Chen organized the papers into neat piles. With both sets of evidence, there's no way Carter can deny this. The brake tampering alone could lead to criminal charges. Grace stood and walked to the window, watching volunteers tend to the cottage gardens. An elderly veteran waved to a young mother pushing a stroller. This was what mattered, not marble boardrooms or stock prices, but people caring for each other. We need to do this right, Grace said, turning back to the table. Not in some corporate press room. Rosa nodded slowly. Here at Maple Run? Yes. Grace's voice grew stronger. This community represents everything Carter tried to destroy: trust, dignity, second chances. We'll hold the press conference right here, among the people who remind us what really matters. Miss Chen gathered her files into a briefcase. I can have everything ready by tomorrow morning. Video evidence, financial records, all of it. I'll need to tell Mateo first, Rosa said softly. Really tell him. He deserves to hear it from me, not on the news. Grace pulled out her phone, finding Noah's number. Her finger hovered over it for a moment. We should have everyone here, the veterans, the volunteers, the families. Show the board what real power looks like. The power of truth, Rosa added. Grace's heart ached, remembering Noah's face in the church last night, the lonely candle flickering in the darkness. She'd wanted so badly to go to him then, to explain everything. Now she finally could. She pressed the call button. It rang several times before Noah answered, his voice guarded. "Grace?" She took a deep breath. "I think it's time the truth came out." The autumn sun warmed the grass at Maple Run as crowds gathered around a small podium set up near the veterans' cottages. Local news vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the clear blue sky. Residents peered from their porches, some still in work uniforms, others holding sleeping babies. Evelyn Whitmore stood at the microphone, her silver hair gleaming, one hand resting on her cane. Despite her age, her voice carried across the lawn with unwavering authority. "We're here today because truth matters more than image," she began. "The Whitmore name wasn't built on marble lobby, it was built on doing what's right." In the front row, Rosa Alvarez sat with her hands folded in her lap, Mateo fidgeting beside her in his Sunday best. Grace stood to the side, her usual designer clothes replaced by a simple blouse and skirt. Noah watched from the back, near the cottage steps, his presence quiet but steady. "I'd like to introduce someone who's worked at Whitmore Plaza for 15 years. Evelyn continued. "Someone whose dignity and hard work represent the real foundation of our success. Rosa Alvarez, would you please come forward?" Rosa walked to the podium, her steps measured and deliberate. Camera shutters clicked rapidly. She smoothed her skirt, took a deep breath, and began speaking in her clear, accented English. "7 years ago, I believed promises made to me by Carter Langford." Rosa's voice trembled slightly, but grew stronger. "He said he would help me, help our child. But when I told him I was pregnant, he disappeared. He threatened my job if I ever spoke up." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A movement near the back caught Grace's eye. Carter had arrived, his face reddening as he pushed through the reporters. "I kept quiet to protect my son," Rosa continued. "But Mateo deserves the truth. All of us do." She turned to her son. "Mateo, would you like to say something?" The little boy nodded and stepped up to the microphone, which Evelyn lowered for him. He clutched a toy car in one hand, his voice small but clear in the sudden hush. "I just want my dad to tell the truth." Carter surged forward. "This is ridiculous. You can't possibly." "We have proof," Grace cut in, stepping to the podium. She nodded to a reporter in the front row. "Ms. Chen from the Herald has copies of the paternity test results. And there's more." Grace lifted a stack of documents. "These records show that Carter Langford, through a series of shell companies, hired contractors to tamper with the brakes of the car that nearly killed me 3 weeks ago. The same day Noah Carter saved my life." Gasps and camera flashes filled the air. Carter's face had gone from red to white. "That's a lie," he shouted. "This is all a setup." "Actually," the Herald reporter interrupted, holding up her tablet, "we have the electronic trail right here. Payments from Alpine Holdings to Maritime Solutions to Jackson Sons Auto. Would you like to explain why all these companies share the same post office box as your personal LLC, Mr. Langford?" Other reporters crowded forward, shoving microphones toward Carter. "Is it true you tried to discredit Noah Carter to cover your tracks? What about the paternity test? Did you knowingly endanger Ms. Whitmore's life?" Carter's lawyer appeared at his elbow, whispering urgently. But Carter shoved him aside, his composure cracking. "You think you're so clever?" he snarled at Grace. "You and your pet hero and this maid? That's enough." Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos like steel. "Mr. Langford, I suggest you leave before you say something else you'll regret in court." The crowd parted as Carter stormed toward his waiting car, reporters trailing him with shouted questions. Grace watched him go, then turned back to the microphone. "The Whitmore Foundation stands for integrity," she said firmly. "We're implementing new worker protection policies, starting with a full review of all contractor relationships. And we're expanding the Veterans Housing Program, with Rosa Alvarez heading up our community outreach." A young woman in a CPS blazer made her way through the crowd toward Noah. "Mr. Carter?" She extended her hand. "I'm Sarah Martinez. Given the new evidence coming to light, we're expediting our review of your case. I think we can have Lily home very soon." The tension in Noah's shoulders eased slightly, but his voice remained careful. "How soon?" "We'll start the paperwork today," she assured him. "The footage clearly shows the context of the incident was misrepresented. And the community support here?" She gestured at the cottages, the gathered neighbors. "This is exactly the kind of stable environment we look for." Grace watched their exchange from the podium, her heart lifting. The truth was finally flowing into the light, washing away weeks of shadows and fear. Rosa hugged Mateo close, and Evelyn stood tall beside them, her cane planted firmly on solid ground. The late morning sun climbed higher, warming the fresh paint on the cottage walls and glinting off the news cameras as they captured every moment of justice finally being served. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains of Diane and Mark's craftsman-style home, casting delicate shadows across their living room floor. Noah sat stiffly on their beige couch, his hands clasped together to keep them from shaking. The CPS caseworker, Ms. Chen, spread several documents across the coffee table, while Diane and Mark settled into their matching armchairs. "We've reviewed all the evidence," Ms. Chen said, her voice gentle but professional, "including security footage from multiple angles and smartphone videos from several Maple Run residents." She pulled out a tablet and pressed play. The screen showed Noah at the duplex that day, his voice raised but not in anger trying to be heard over the crowd of reporters. In the complete footage, they could clearly see him asking the journalist to respect his daughter's privacy, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. The edited version that circulated online was deliberately misleading. Ms. Chen explained, "We've also received dozens of character statements from your neighbors, the veterans' families, and even Lily's teachers." Mark leaned forward, his weathered face creased with worry. "What exactly are you saying?" "There's no evidence of an unsafe environment," Chen stated firmly. "In fact, quite the opposite. Mr. Carter has demonstrated consistent, loving care for his daughter, while maintaining stable employment and strong community connections." Diane's eyes welled with tears. She reached for the tissue box on the side table, dabbing at her eyes. "We were so scared," she whispered, "after losing Sarah." Her voice cracked on her daughter's name. Noah's throat tightened. "I know you were trying to protect her," he said softly. "She's all we have left of Sarah." Mark stood up suddenly, pacing to the window. "We watched that awful video, saw those headlines." He turned back to Noah, his shoulders slumping. "We should have known better. Should have talked to you first. The community support for your family has been remarkable, Ms. C," Chen added, sorting through more papers. "I have letters from the Maple Run Veterans Association, the school board, and numerous neighbors vouching for your character and parenting." A small sound from the hallway made them all turn. Lily stood there in her favorite purple sweater, her dark hair in slightly messy braids. She'd been staying in her mother's old bedroom, surrounded by teenage memories of Sarah. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, uncertain. Noah's heart clenched. "Hey, sweetheart." Diane stood up, wiping her eyes again. "Mark and we're withdrawing our petition for custody." She looked at her husband, who nodded firmly. "We were wrong, Noah. We let fear cloud our judgment." "We'd still like to be part of her life," Mark added quickly, "but she belongs with you. We see that now." Ms. Chen smiled, gathering her documents. "I'll file the paperwork today. Mr. Carter, you're free to take Lily home." Lily's face lit up like sunshine breaking through clouds. She ran across the room, launching herself into Noah's arms. He caught her, holding her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Tears pricked his eyes as she wrapped her arms around his neck. "I missed you so much, Daddy," she whispered. "I missed you too, baby girl, every single minute." Diane approached them slowly, her hands twisting together. "Noah, we..." She stopped, took a deep breath. "We're so sorry. Seeing how many people came forward for you both, how they spoke about your kindness, your strength." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Sarah would be proud of the father you've become." Noah stood, still holding Lily, and reached out to squeeze Diane's hand. "She'd be proud of how much you love our girl," he said softly. We're still family. Different than we planned, but family all the same." Mark joined them, placing one hand on Lily's back and the other on his wife's shoulder. "We'd like to have you both over for Sunday dinners," he said gruffly, emotion making his voice rough. "If you'll have us—" "Every Sunday?" Lily asked hopefully, lifting her head from Noah's shoulder. Noah smiled, his heart full. "Every Sunday we can make it." They gathered Lily's Thingsure backpack, the stuffed rabbit she couldn't sleep without, her inhaler. As they prepared to leave, Diane pressed a photo album into Noah's hands. "Sarah made this her senior year," she explained. "I thought maybe Lily would like to have it." "Thank you," Noah said simply, understanding all the trust and acceptance wrapped up in that gesture. They stepped out onto the front porch, the late morning sun warm on their faces. Lily held Noah's hand on one side and clutched her rabbit on the other. Behind them, Diane and Mark stood in the doorway, no longer as adversaries, but as family finding their way back to solid ground. The walk home to their duplex was quiet, peaceful. Lily skipped between Noah and Mark, occasionally swinging their joined hands. A few neighbors waved from their yards, genuine smiles of welcome on their faces. The truth had come out, and with it, healing had begun. Their footsteps fell into an easy rhythm on the familiar sidewalk, 3 hearts beating stronger together, heading home at last. The Whitmore Hotel's boardroom stretched before Grace like a battlefield at dawn. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table. The room buzzed with nervous energy as board members shifted in their leather chairs, legal teams shuffled papers, and reporters waited with notepads ready. Grace sat tall in her chair, her grandmother Evelyn beside her, both women radiating quiet strength. Across the table, Carter Langford slumped in his seat, his usual swagger replaced by defeat. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. "Let's begin," Grace announced, her voice clear and steady. "We're here to formalize several changes in Whitmore Hotel's leadership and policies." The company's head counsel stood, adjusting his reading glasses. "Mr. Langford has agreed to resign from all positions within Whitmore Hotels and its subsidiaries, effective immediately. The terms of his separation agreement include a public apology regarding recent events and establishment of child support for Mateo Alvarez." Carter's jaw clenched, but he managed a stiff nod. Rosa sat at the far end of the table, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes fixed straight ahead. "Mr. Langford," the lawyer prompted. "Your statement, please." Carter rose slowly, straightening his tie. He cleared his throat. "I acknowledge my actions were unethical and caused harm to multiple parties. I apologize to Rosa Alvarez and our son Mateo for my past denial of paternity and failure to provide support." His words came out wooden, rehearsed, but Rosa's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I also apologize to Grace Whitmore and Noah Carter for orchestrating the vehicle sabotage attempt and subsequent smear campaign. My behavior was inexcusable." He sat back down, color high in his cheeks. Grace nodded once, then turned to the gathered press. "Whitmore Hotels is entering a new chapter. I'm pleased to announce Diana Chen as our new Chief Operating Officer." She gestured to a sharp-dressed woman who'd previously headed the Foundation's community initiatives. Diana brings 15 years of experience in ethical business practices and community development. Diana stood, smiling warmly. "Thank you, Grace. I'm honored to help lead Whitmore Hotels toward a future that balances profit with purpose. Additionally," Grace continued, "we're making our Veterans Housing Initiative permanent. The success of Maple Run has shown us the power of investing in community." She shared a brief glance with Evelyn, drawing strength from her grandmother's proud smile. "We're committing $50 million over 5 years to expand the program nationwide." Cameras clicked rapidly as reporters scribbled notes. The board members who'd previously opposed Grace now sat up straighter, seeing the tide of public opinion clearly turning in her favor. "Furthermore," Grace added, "we're implementing new hiring initiatives for veterans and single parents, including comprehensive training programs and flexible scheduling options." She thought of Noah, of his quiet dignity driving a school bus while raising Lily alone. Everyone deserves a chance to build a stable future for their families. The company lawyer stood again, presenting documents for signatures. Carter's pen scratched across paper, making official his removal and obligations. Rosa signed the child support agreement, her hand steady. Grace approved the new initiatives and Diana's appointment. When the last signature dried, Grace addressed the room one final time. Whitmore Hotels was founded on the belief that success and integrity go hand in hand. Today, we're recommitting to that vision. She gathered her papers, noting how some board members who'd threatened her position now avoided her gaze. "Thank you all for coming." As people filed out, Rosa approached Carter. "Mateo has soccer practice on Thursdays," she said quietly. "He would like you to come watch sometimes." Carter nodded, a flicker of something like regret crossing his face. Diana stayed behind to shake hands with board members, already commanding respect in her new role. Grace watched her work the room with quiet confidence, knowing she'd chosen well. The reporters departed last, clutching their stories about Whitmore Hotel's dramatic leadership change and renewed community focus. Grace remained seated, suddenly exhausted but satisfied, like after running a long race. Evelyn reached over and clasped Grace's hand. Her grip was strong despite her age, her eyes bright with pride. "That's my granddaughter," she whispered, and Grace felt tears prick at her eyes. For a moment, they sat together in the emptying boardroom, grandmother and granddaughter, the morning sun warming their shoulders. The weight of weeks of tension began to lift, replaced by the lightness of truth finally spoken and justice finally served. The rooftop garden of Whitmore Plaza glowed in the soft evening light. Lanterns hung between trellises draped with flowering vines, their gentle illumination mixing with the fading sunset. The air carried the sweet scent of jasmine and fresh herbs from the kitchen garden. Noah stood at the railing, his hands resting on the smooth metal as he gazed out at the city skyline. His shoulders, usually tense with worry, had finally relaxed after the events of the past few days. The weight of uncertainty about Lily's custody no longer pressed down on him. Grace approached quietly, her heels clicking softly against the stone path. She'd changed from her business attire into a simple blue dress that moved gently in the evening breeze. When Noah turned to face her, his expression softened. "I didn't expect to find you up here," Grace said, moving to stand beside him. "Your grandmother mentioned it was your favorite spot." Noah's voice was warm. "I can see why." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as dusk deepened. A gentle wind rustled through the garden, carrying the sound of distant traffic below. "Thank you," Noah said finally, turning to face her. "For everything you did. For standing up to Carter. For helping clear my name. For fighting for the truth when it would have been easier to just..." He trailed off, searching for words. "To just go along with what everyone expected?" Grace finished for him. She shook her head. "I couldn't do that. Not to you. Not to Rosa and Mateo. Not to myself." Noah's eyes held hers. "It took courage. You risked everything." "Some things are worth risking everything for," Grace replied softly. She moved closer, her shoulder brushing against his. The truth, justice, love. The word hung between them, delicate but undeniable. Noah's hand found hers on the railing, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I've been afraid," he admitted, his voice low. "Not just of losing Lily, but of feeling this way again. After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. I packed it away with her photos and her favorite sweater and all the plans we'd made." Grace squeezed his hand gently. "I know, and I would never want to replace those memories." "That's just it," Noah said, turning to face her fully. "You don't try to replace anything. You've created something new, something I never expected to find again." In the garden around them, crickets began their evening song. A cool breeze carried the scent of roses from the nearby trellis. "When I'm with you," Grace said, "I don't feel like I have to be the perfect Whitmore heiress. I can just be me. Messy, imperfect, still figuring things out." Noah reached up, his fingers gentle against her cheek. You're perfect exactly as you are. Even when I'm making headlines and shaking up 100-year-old companies, a smile played at the corners of her mouth. Especially then. His thumb traced her jawline. You fight for what's right. You see people, really see them. Like you saw me, that first day in the hospital. Not just some struggling single dad, but a person worth knowing. Grace leaned into his touch. You were worth knowing from the moment you ran toward danger instead of away from it. Not because it was heroic, but because it was simply who you are. Noah's other hand slipped around her waist, drawing her closer. The city lights sparkled behind them, but neither was looking at the view anymore. I love you, he said simply. Not despite all the complications, but including them. Your strength, your compassion, your determination to make things right, they're all part of who you are. Tears glimmered in Grace's eyes, but she was smiling. I love you too. You and your quiet courage, your steadfast heart, the way you love Lily with everything you have. This time when they kissed, it wasn't tentative like their first kiss behind the tool shed at Maple Run. This kiss held certainty, the certainty of two people who had faced storms together and emerged stronger. Noah's arms wrapped around her waist as Grace's hands slid up to his shoulders, drawing him closer. When they finally pulled apart, they stayed close, foreheads touching. The garden around them was fully dark now, the lanterns casting a warm glow over the flowers and herbs. So, what happens now? Grace asked softly. Now, Noah said, we build something new, together. She smiled, her fingers lacing through his. I like the sound of that. The city stretched out before them, a tapestry of lights against the darkening sky. Grace tugged gently on Noah's hand, and together they turned toward the rooftop door, leaving the garden behind but carrying its peace with them. Golden morning sunlight streamed through the trees lining Maple Run's main street, casting dappled shadows on the newly paved sidewalks. Where once stood empty lots, neat rows of cottages now stretched in tidy formation, their fresh paint gleaming. Window boxes bursting with colorful flowers adorned each home, and American flags fluttered proudly from several porches. Noah walked along the community path, coffee in hand, taking in the remarkable changes of the past year. Children's bikes leaned against fence posts, and the sound of laughter drifted from open windows. He paused to wave at Mike, a former Marine who'd moved in 3 months ago and now worked as a sous chef at Whitmore Plaza. Morning, Noah, Mike called out from his garden. Tell Grace those cooking classes she set up are working wonders. Got promoted last week. That's fantastic, Noah grinned, genuinely pleased. The Whitmore Hotel's training program had exceeded everyone's expectations. What started as a small initiative had spread to every Whitmore property across the state, offering veterans and single parents a clear path to stable careers. As he rounded the corner toward the community center, Noah spotted Rosa's car pulling into her designated parking space. She stepped out wearing her professionally tailored guest services manager uniform, her badge gleaming in the morning light. The promotion had come through shortly after the truth about Carter emerged, but everyone knew she'd earned it through years of dedication. Good morning, Mr. Carter, Rosa called out warmly. Mateo's already inside with Lily. They're setting up for their Fix-It Club meeting. The community center's main room buzzed with activity. Lily and Mateo had commandeered a corner, laying out tools and broken appliances on folding tables. Other kids were already gathering around, eager to learn how to repair everything from toasters to toy cars. Remember, safety glasses on, Mateo instructed, sounding exactly like his mother. At 11, he'd grown more confident since Carter had acknowledged him and begun regular visits. The monthly child support helped, but it was the simple recognition that had made the biggest difference. Lily looked up from the disassembled alarm clock she was explaining to a younger girl. Dad, come see what we fixed yesterday. She proudly held up an old radio that now played music clearly. Her inhaler lay forgotten on the table nearby. She needed it less often these days, the stress of uncertainty no longer triggering her asthma. That's amazing, sweetheart, Noah said, examining her handiwork. Your mom would have loved seeing you figure things out like this. He could say things like that now without the sharp edge of grief. Grace had helped him understand that keeping Sarah's memory alive for Lily didn't mean he couldn't embrace their new happiness. The center's doors swung open as Diane and Mark arrived carrying boxes of homemade cookies. Their relationship with Noah had transformed since the custody battle ended. Regular Sunday dinners and community events had slowly rebuilt trust, and they'd become steady fixtures at Maple Run's gatherings. "We brought snacks for the Fix-It Club," Diane announced, setting down her box. Her eyes were warm as she watched Lily demonstrate proper screwdriver technique to the other children. Sarah would be so proud of her. Mark nodded, squeezing Noah's shoulder. "Of both of you," he added quietly. Through the windows they could see Grace pulling up in her car. She'd swapped her designer suits for casual wear on community days, though she still carried herself with natural elegance. The kids called out greetings as she entered, and she stopped to admire their projects before making her way to Noah. The board just approved expanding the training program to 3 more cities, she said, excitement lighting up her face. And Rosa's new hiring guidelines are being implemented company-wide. Noah wrapped an arm around her waist, both of them watching the scene before them. Veterans chatted with single moms by the coffee station, sharing job leads and childcare tips. Teenagers from the local high school helped younger kids with homework at study tables. The Fix-It Club had spread out their repair projects, creating an impromptu teaching space. "Remember when this was just an empty building?" Grace mused, leaning into Noah's side. "Look at us now," he replied softly. Mateo and Lily had moved on to showing their group how to test batteries, their heads bent together in concentration. Rosa watched them proudly while sorting through paperwork for her next training session at the hotel. Diane and Mark arranged cookies on plates, falling easily into conversation with other parents. "Dad," Lily called out suddenly, running over with a paper in her hands, "I made this in art class yesterday." She held up a colorful drawing showing stick figures in front of the cottages. There was Noah and Grace, Lily herself, Rosa and Mateo, Diane and Mark, Evelyn with her cane, and more figures representing their growing community. "It's our new big family," Lily explained, beaming. "See? I put everyone in it." Noah knelt down to examine the drawing, his throat tight with emotion. Grace's hand rested on his shoulder as they took in Lily's artistic representation of their expanded world. The simple crayon lines captured something profound, how their lives had grown richer through connecting with others, how healing happened in community, how family could be both born and chosen. "It's perfect, sweetheart," Noah managed, pulling her into a hug. "Absolutely perfect." "Can we hang it in the community center?" Lily asked hopefully. "So everyone can see it?" "I think that's a wonderful idea," Grace agreed. "Right next to the mission statement." They watched as Lily skipped off to show her artwork to Diane and Mark, then rejoined Mateo at their repair station. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the busy room filled with people who had become more than neighbors. They had become family, bound together by choice and circumstance, stronger for having found each other. Late afternoon, sunlight poured through the stained glass windows of Maple Run Chapel, painting rainbow patterns across the worn wooden pews. The small church buzzed with quiet excitement as friends, family, and community members settled into their seats. Fresh wildflowers and simple white ribbons adorned the ends of each row, and mason jars filled with baby's breath lined the center aisle. In the tiny back room of the chapel, Grace stood before a vintage mirror, smoothing the simple silk of her cream-colored dress. No designer label or crystal embellishments, just elegant simplicity that matched the honest warmth of the day. Her grandmother Evelyn sat in a cushioned chair nearby, watching with bright eyes as Grace adjusted her mother's pearl earrings. "Much better than that circus we almost had last year," Evelyn remarked, her voice rich with approval. "This is exactly as it should be." Grace turned, smiling. "You were right all along, Gran. Real wealth is who shows up when it's raining." A soft knock at the door preceded Lily's entrance. The girl twirled in her pale blue junior bridesmaid dress, her face glowing with joy. "Daddy says he's ready whenever you are," she announced, then added with a giggle, "But his hands are kind of shaky." Evelyn beckoned Lily closer. "Come here, sweetheart. I have something for you." From her purse, she withdrew a delicate silver locket on a thin chain. Every Whitmore bride carries something old and something new. This locket is both. Lily carefully opened the heart-shaped pendant. Inside, a tiny photograph showed Noah, Grace, and Lily laughing together on the steps of their new home. Beside it, pressed flat and preserved behind glass, was a small leaf. "That leaf," Evelyn explained, "comes from the prayer journal your father kept during his time as a medic. He pressed it between the pages the day he saved Grace's life." Sometimes, the smallest things mark the biggest changes in our lives. Tears welled in Grace's eyes as she watched Evelyn fasten the chain around Lily's neck. The girl touched the locket reverently, understanding its significance beyond her years. In the chapel's main hall, Noah stood at the altar beside Pastor Mike, who had counseled him through his darkest days after losing Lily's mother. Noah's dress uniform was pressed crisp, his medals catching the light. But it was his smile, open and unguarded, that truly showed how far he'd come. The small string quartet, made up of high school students, Noah drove on his bus route, began playing a gentle melody. The wooden doors at the back of the chapel opened. Rosa entered first, carrying Mateo on her hip. As guest services manager at Whitmore Plaza, she'd insisted on helping coordinate the wedding, but Grace had firmly guided her to the role of bridesmaid instead. Behind them came Diane and Mark, Lily's grandparents, who now spent Sunday dinners with the expanding family. Other familiar faces filled the pews, veterans from the cottages, church ladies who'd brought casseroles during hard times, volunteers who'd helped build homes, and children from Noah's bus route. Lily walked down the aisle next, carefully dropping rose petals from a basket she'd decorated herself. When she reached the front, she took her place beside Evelyn, who had insisted on using her cane to walk Grace down the aisle herself. The music shifted, and everyone stood. Grace appeared in the doorway with Evelyn on her arm. Noah's breath caught as he watched them approach. This wasn't the polished heiress from magazine covers. This was the real Grace, radiating joy and purpose, her eyes fixed on his. Pastor Mike smiled as Evelyn placed Grace's hand in Noah's. The elderly woman pressed a kiss to each of their cheeks before taking her seat beside Lily. "Friends and family," Pastor Mike began, "we gather today not just to witness a wedding, but to celebrate how love grows in unexpected places, how truth prevails over pretense, and how God's plan unfolds in His own perfect time." Noah and Grace had written their own vows, simple and sincere. Noah spoke first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Grace, you came into our lives like a miracle, but you stayed because of choice, yours and mine. You showed me that loving again doesn't diminish what was, it only multiplies what can be. I promise to stand beside you in all weather, to build our future one day at a time, and to never take for granted the gift of this second chance." Grace squeezed his hands, tears glinting in her eyes as she spoke. "Noah, you saved my life twice, once with your courage and again with your integrity. You taught me that real strength lies in doing what's right, not what's easy. I promise to face whatever comes together, to cherish our blended family, and to remember always that love is an action word." They exchanged rings, simple gold bands that meant more than any diamond could express. Pastor Mike's words of blessing nearly drowned in the sniffles and happy sighs from the congregation. "By the power vested in me," he proclaimed with evident joy, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Noah cupped Grace's face gently in his hands and kissed her, sweet and true. Behind them, Lily bounced on her toes, clapping with delight. The string quartet struck up a jubilant tune as Noah and Grace turned to face their loved ones. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the silver of Lily's locket as she fell into step beside them. The chapel filled with applause and cheers as they walked back down the aisle together, not as heroes and heiresses, but as family. Through the open chapel doors, they could hear hammers in the distance as work continued on the next row of veterans' cottages. The sound blended perfectly with the celebration, a reminder that love, like faith, was always building something new. The community hall hummed with laughter and conversation as afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows. Simple white tablecloths covered long tables laden with homemade dishes: Mrs. Peterson's famous potato salad, Rosa's enchiladas, and enough casseroles to feed an army. Paper lanterns swayed gently from exposed wooden beams, and mason jars filled with wildflowers dotted every surface. Grace sat beside Noah at the head table, their shoulders touching. She watched as Lily and Mateo led a group of children in a game of tag through the open double doors, their gleeful shrieks mixing with the steady rhythm of hammers from the construction site next door. "Should we tell them to quiet down?" Noah asked, his eyes crinkling with amusement as he watched the kids race past. "Not a chance," Grace replied, squeezing his hand. "This is exactly what a wedding should sound like. Life happening all around us." Evelyn made her way to their table, moving carefully with her cane but refusing any help. She settled into the chair beside Grace, gesturing toward the volunteers working on the new row of cottages. "They wouldn't stop even for the wedding," she said proudly. "Said the best gift they could give was keeping the momentum going." Noah nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's what makes this community special. Everyone understands what matters." The afternoon light softened as guests mingled between tables, sharing stories and second helpings of dessert. Rosa approached with Mateo, who was slightly out of breath from running. "The new training program starts next week," Rosa said, smoothing her son's hair. "We already have 12 veterans and 8 single mothers signed up. And 3 more cities have reached out about starting their own programs," Grace added, her eyes bright with purpose. "The Foundation's board actually suggested we expand faster than planned." "What a difference from last year," Noah mused, thinking of the old board and their ultimatums. A burst of laughter drew their attention to where Diane and Mark sat with some of the veteran families, passing around photos of Lily's latest school play. The transformation in their relationship over the past year still amazed Grace, from custody threats to Sunday dinners and genuine friendship. Outside, the steady sound of hammering continued as volunteers worked on the framework of 3 new cottages. The sunset painted the sky in soft pinks and oranges, casting long shadows across the construction site. Grace noticed Noah watching the workers with that quiet intensity she'd grown to love. "Want to step outside for a minute?" she asked softly. Noah smiled, standing and offering his hand. They walked together through the open doors, the sounds of the reception fading behind them. The evening air was cool and sweet, with the scent of fresh-cut lumber. Several volunteers waved from their perches on the rising wooden frames. Mr. Jenkins, a Vietnam veteran who'd been one of their first residents, called down from where he was securing a crossbeam. "Hope you don't mind us working through your party." "Wouldn't have it any other way," Noah called back. Grace leaned against Noah's shoulder as they watched the progress. "Remember when this was just an empty lot? And now look at it," Noah said, gesturing to the finished cottages where lights were starting to come on in windows, making them glow like lanterns in the dusk. 28 families housed, with 6 more coming soon. "I was thinking," Grace said, turning to face him, "what if we started looking at properties in River Valley? Their veteran population has doubled in the last 5 years, and they have that old industrial park that's just sitting empty." Noah's face lit up with that particular expression she'd come to recognize, the one that meant he was already mentally sketching plans and running numbers. The location would be perfect. Close to the VA center, walking distance to shops. He paused, chuckling. "Maybe we should wait until tomorrow to start planning the next project?" "Why wait?" Grace smiled. "This is who we are, building something that matters." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in deeper shades of purple and gold. The volunteers began packing up their tools for the day, their satisfied voices carrying on the evening breeze. Through the open doors of the community hall they could hear Lily's laugh mixing with the music and conversation. "Your grandmother told me something interesting earlier," Noah said, "about why your great-grandparents chose the name Whitmore when they immigrated. She said they wanted a name that meant, 'do the right thing.'" Grace nodded. "And now we're finally living up to it. Not just talking about making a difference, but actually building it, one family at a time. The framework of the new cottages stood like promises against the darkening sky, each beam and board representing another chance for someone to find their way home. From inside the hall they heard Evelyn calling for everyone to gather for the cake cutting. Noah took Grace's hand, his wedding ring catching the last rays of sunlight. "Should we head back in?" "In a minute," Grace said, still watching the sunset paint the half-built cottages in shades of gold. "I just want to remember this moment, exactly as it is." The porch swing creaked softly as Noah, Grace, and Lily swayed in the gentle evening breeze. The setting sun painted the sky in soft oranges and pinks, casting long shadows across their front yard. Mateo zoomed past on his blue bicycle, training wheels clicking against the sidewalk as he made another determined loop. "Careful around the corner," Rosa called from where she sat in one of the weathered wooden chairs, a glass of sweet tea perspiring beside her. Noah's arm rested comfortably along the back of the swing, his fingers absently playing with one of Grace's dark curls. Lily nestled between them, her head resting against Grace's side as she tracked Mateo's progress. "Can I ride my bike too?" Lily asked, looking up at Noah with hopeful eyes. "Not tonight, sweetheart. It's getting dark soon," Noah replied, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "But maybe tomorrow after the ribbon-cutting ceremony?" Lily's face brightened. "I can't wait to see the new houses. Did you hang up my welcome signs?" "Every single one," Grace assured her, smoothing Lily's hair. "And the garden club planted those sunflowers you wanted along the walking path." The steady rhythm of hammers echoed from down the street, where the latest row of veterans' cottages was nearing completion. The sound had become as familiar as birdsong in their neighborhood, a percussion of progress and promise. "Remember when we first started?" Noah mused, his voice soft with wonder. "That empty lot full of weeds. And now—" Grace reached across Lily to squeeze his hand. "Now we have a real community. 20 families moved in so far, and tomorrow makes 25. 26, Lily corrected proudly. "Don't forget Mr. Rodriguez and his dog." Noah chuckled. "You're right. Can't forget Scout. He's the official welcome wagon." A comfortable silence settled over them, broken only by Mateo's cheerful bell ringing as he made another pass. The streetlights began to flicker on, one by one, but the porch light cast a warm golden glow around them. "Sometimes I still can't believe how it all started," Grace said, shaking her head. "That runaway car could have been the end of everything, but instead it was just the beginning." Noah finished, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled at her. The memory of that day, the screech of tires, the flash of white satin, the heart-stopping moment of impact, had softened with time, transformed from nightmare to origin story. Lily sat up straighter, always eager to hear this part. And then Daddy was a hero, and Grandma Evelyn made lemon cake, and then some very brave people decided to tell the truth, Grace added gently, exchanging a meaningful look with Rosa. Rosa nodded, watching Mateo pedal by. "The truth has a way of coming out, mi amor. Sometimes it just needs a little help." The hammering paused briefly, and voices carried across the evening air, volunteers calling out measurements, sharing tools, building not just houses but hope. Tomorrow's ribbon cutting would mark their largest expansion yet, with plans already drawn up for similar projects in neighboring towns. "Ms. Andrews said we're doing a special song at the ceremony," Lily announced, swinging her legs. "All us kids are going to sing about building dreams or something." "Building dreams, building home," Grace confirmed. "Evelyn helped them write it. She'll be there tomorrow too. Wouldn't miss it for the world, she says." Noah smiled, remembering the formidable grandmother's first assessment of him over tea and that famous lemon cake. Who could have predicted then that her sharp eyes had seen not just a bus driver who'd saved her granddaughter, but the future of the Whitmore legacy itself? A delighted squeal drew their attention as Mateo successfully navigated a slightly sharper turn than usual. Did you see that?" he called out proudly. "Amazing," Noah encouraged. "You'll be ready for no training wheels soon." "Not too soon," Rosa laughed, but her eyes shone with pride. The porch swing swayed again as Lily curled closer to Grace, stifling a small yawn. The sky had deepened to purple, stars beginning to peek through. Down the street, porch lights winked on one after another. The cottages coming alive with evening routines, families settling in, children being called to dinner. "You know what I love most?" Grace said softly, her fingers intertwined with Noah's behind Lily's shoulders. "It's not just the houses we've built. It's all of this. The bike rides and porch swings, the potluck dinners and homework clubs. It's watching people find their place, their purpose." Noah nodded, understanding completely. Through the screen door, they could see the kitchen where they'd shared countless meals, the walls now covered with Lily's artwork and family photos. On the side table sat the crystal plaque from that first gala, catching the porch light's glow, a reminder of how far they'd come. The hammering resumed its steady rhythm as the volunteer crew worked to finish before dark. Soon they'd pack up for the day, but tomorrow would bring more helping hands, more progress. The sound had become a lullaby of sorts for their neighborhood, a testament to continued growth and endless possibility. Mateo made one final loop before parking his bike. "Can we have ice cream?" he asked hopefully, climbing the porch steps. "After dinner," Rosa promised, standing to collect her son. "Which reminds me, we should head home and start cooking. See you all tomorrow at the ceremony?" "Wouldn't miss it," Grace smiled, waving as mother and son headed down the sidewalk toward their house 3 doors down. The hammering grew softer, almost musical in the deepening dusk. Lily's breathing had grown steady and deep, half asleep between them on the swing. Noah pressed a kiss to her hair, then met Grace's eyes over their daughter's head. "You know," he said quietly, "when I lost Sarah, I never thought I'd find this kind of happiness again. Didn't think I deserved it." Grace's hand tightened on his. "And I never thought I'd find someone who saw past the Whitmore name to me." The porch light cast its gentle glow over them as another set of hammers joined the symphony from down the street. A burst of laughter drifted through the evening air, volunteers sharing some joke as they worked, their dedication undiminished by the late hour. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Noah Carter, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.